everybody. Welcome to a very special mini-series, The Mummy Minute. We are celebrating Rocktober, Spooktober. We're celebrating the spookiest month by talking about mummies for 3 episodes. This is just me and Ez, and I'm Alex Falcone. This is Ezra Fox. Hey, buddy.
Hello.
And what's happened is, over the last few years, you and I have accidentally become world-renowned experts on mummies, in parentheses, as romantic objects.
Yeah. No, the sexy mummy experts, specifically the undead, wrapped up kind of mummies that are not supposed to be sex objects as far as most people think about them, but for us,
Correct.
That is the niche that we kind of backed into.
And you need a hyphen in there, sexy hyphen mummy experts, so no one comes after us and thinks we must be sexy, although their voices indicate otherwise. So we wrote a best-selling young adult romance novel, Unwrap My Heart, which is about mummies. We did it because mummies are ridiculous, but through research and talking about the book afterwards, we've learned a lot. We have a lot of thoughts on mummies, and there were a lot of questions last time the book went viral about other mummy media that preceded us, and so we've decided to weigh in just to celebrate the spooky month by talking through. It's really spoopy. Mummies are, I think, categorically spoopy. They're not.
I would even say
an actual scary thing
because of the attractiveness, though. Maybe they're spooksy, like that with the XY of sexy. At the minute.
Oh gosh!
So it's both spooky,
nope,
a little silly,
Spexy.
And also sexy. I think that's
yeah. That's what it is. So for the next 3 episodes, we're going to talk about 3 iconic mummy media things that have romance twists, and we are going to talk about them and break down our thoughts as mummy experts. It's for your listening pleasure and your viewing pleasure if you're on YouTube. Mm-hmm. This week, we're going to start things off by watching the thing that started everything off. We're watching the 1932 movie The Mummy, and this is crucial, even though it's not anybody's official favorite mummy movie, really. Like, the obvious best mummy movie of all time, the iconic movie, I'd say the platonic ideal of a mummy movie is Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy. That's the best one.
I mean, and definitely the hottest. I think we can all agree. Like
It's so hot.
Everyone in that is just a smoke show from
start to finish. I mean, it turns out the thing that I am most turned on by is silly misunderstandings. That's what I love. I like physical comedy.
I mean, the thing I like a duo who can handle some excavation equipment. I think in surprising ways.
And I like the mummy. My favorite mummy costume is for it to look like pajamas. Anyway, we're not talking about that movie. That's the best movie. But we're talking about the first movie, and this really is I don't know how much you've read about this in preparation for this episode or in your time before, but this is Universal trying to make mummies a thing, because mummies are mostly not a thing, and then after the Universal at this point has had 2 successes with Dracula and Frankenstein. And they're like, we are now the monster company. We need a third monster. Very recently in the news, we've dug up King Tut's tomb. And so we're like, there's like mummies are in the air, but they're not really a monster. They're like oogie. They're a little gross. And they decided to square peg, just jam this peg into this hole and make them a scary, scary monster by releasing this movie in 1932. So we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to talk to you about some mummy news.
Yeah.
We have some. Oh, I wish I had a newsy intro. That's close enough. Mummy news. So 2 quick stories I want to talk to you about. First of all, it is October 2023, which means we are officially still very close to the opening of the gem, the Grand Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Have you been following the development of the Grand Egyptian Museum, aka the gem?
I have nope, none of this. I know nothing.
So there's a major plot point in the movie The Mummy, which is that the discoveries when they find the girlfriend mummy is they stay in Egypt. They don't go back to the British Museum, which leads to probably the funniest inadvertent line of the movie, where the guy says, "The British Museum works for the cause of science, not for loot." don't know if that's a new policy as of this filming, but that's what he claims. Anyway,
World domination is what the Brits want, and
Yeah,
not
right.
you know. So it's like if we own the whole world, loot specifically doesn't matter. We'll own the museum as well.
loot's part of
Yeah.
it, but that's not the goal. The goal is domination. Well, so the Egyptian government does still own a lot of their antiquities that were not looted from them by the British, and they've been collecting them and finally getting ready to unveil a massive museum with all of the best treasures that they've brought in from other museums around Egypt. And it started construction in 2002, slated to open in 2013. So they're a little delayed. It's a little late, but supposedly they have said October 2023 or maybe November. So it's like it's getting really, really close. But we've seen it. We've seen pictures of it. It is a gorgeous museum. It's got 100,000 artifacts. It's got the complete King Tut's tomb, and that is super exciting on its own. That would be worth going to.
I mean, here's the thing. If we're talking about things that are like thousands of years old, no one cares if it's like, another 10 years to wait, really, right? Like in the scale of it, that's like, it's pretty much the same. That's like nothing. That's a rounding error.
You do know it's built by modern people, not by the mummies.
I'm just
these
saying,
are built
like,
with people with a human timeline.
No, but if you're Tut, you're like, man, this thing sure is late. It's like, no. It's like it takes what it takes. He's not right.
Famously, Chill King Tut is not upset about it. It's really the people who want to go visit it and have to plan their trip for somewhere in the next 10 years.
Look,
Hopefully, we don't die
they'll see it in
before
this
then.
world or the next, right? Like, death is merely another door.
It's really, really a beautiful looking museum, and it makes me very badly want to go to Cairo. So I'm really excited about it. I read a couple of books about Tut recently, and we're so far after it where King Tut is like a hilarious meme. It's a Steve Martin song. It's like there's a traveling show that has fake King Tut stuff. But how incredible this tomb discovery was back in the day is hard to wrap my mind around, just how incredible this was, because it's the only time we've found a pharaoh's tomb undisturbed.
I mean, someone found a bunch of them undisturbed, and then they went ahead and disturbed them. So I didn't like.
Yeah, the disturbers have found a series of them, but I think mostly I think the idea is that most of them were still looted like in antiquity. Like the fact that it survived this far, and then some British people just snuck in and got drunk, and then snuck back out and resealed it, and came in the next day and announced their findings. Is pretty incredible.
It is amazing. Although I got to shout out to there's a looter from antiquity who's just like, man, I feel like there's one more that we missed. Yeah, right. There's just like
The completest looter.
yeah, Jimmy the looter is just like, man, I just where's that one?
Where's Tut?
Where's Tut?
His white whale.
He never found it.
You're right. Now I feel less excited about the find and more disappointed for Jimmy the looter.
He almost pitched a no-hitter of loot, right? It's just the perfect game of looting.
But somebody talked about it right before the end
no.
and threw it all off.
Jimmy.
It jinxed it. Speaking of people named Jimmy, one more thing in the news is Stoneman Willie was finally buried that last week properly after 128 years. And you're going to ask, why is he named Jimmy? That's because Stoneman Willie is not his real name. His real name is James Murphy.
Oh, well, I mean, so look, I sent you this, but did not read it.
Correct.
So here's
the
but not
story.
read.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm assuming you're not familiar with Stoneman Willie of Reading, Pennsylvania, who's like a famous mummy in Pennsylvania. And the story is so weird, but it's a guy who died in Reading, Pennsylvania 128 years ago. And he was in prison, and he'd given a fake name because he didn't want to embarrass his parents. And so when he died, no one knew he was there. And so that no one claimed his body. So he went to this embalming studio, and there was a guy at the mortuary who was trying something new.
Can I play jazz with this one, please?
Exactly. He was trying a new recipe. He went off book on his embalming fluid and way overdid it. And so instead of just preserving him for the funeral, he permanently mummified him.
Okay, alternative pitch. All the other embalmers have way underdid it, and there could be a whole bunch of mummies out there, and then wouldn't that be a better situation?
I'm going to say no.
Think before you answer.
Okay, now I've thought a little harder about it, and I think still no.
Okay.
But so also normally if you just overdid it and then you put somebody in the ground, it wouldn't matter much. But they overdid it and then no one claimed the body, and so it was as apparently was normal at the time. They put him on display, and he just stayed on display. Seriously, if you went to Reading, Pennsylvania in the last 120 years, you could see permanently accidentally mummified Stoneman Willie in this funeral home just chilling forever.
It's such a weird thing because it's like, hey, you guys gonna pick it up? Because if they don't pick it up the next few days, you kind of have to imagine like they're not gonna want it more after that, right? So it's not like.
So what do you do with it?
I don't know. It's just I feel like they know it's like, look, this is not really like a lost and found section anymore, right? This is like a museum.
I mean, I guess you would. Lost and found implies both that you have a few extra bodies, and then also people are like checking in, be like, "Have you seen this one?"
Take a body, leave a body.
yeah, it's a penny cup for bodies. Well, so he's sitting there for 120 years, and they finally have gone back, done the research, and found his proper family. His real name was James Murphy, and they gave him. But he's like a famous guy, so they now in the city. So they gave him this huge ceremony and a proper burial. And James Murphy is now. His soul can go free. He's been stuck in the stupid funeral parlor for 128 years.
So I love this for a lot of reasons. But the one thing that he wanted is that no one knew who he was. And so haven't we kind of desecrated his memory by giving him the actual name?
He didn't want his parents to find out. And my guess is they still haven't.
Okay.
So I think we're living up to what Stoneman Willie would have wanted. Also, I like this story because one of the things that's important about mummies, we focus so much on Egyptian mummies because they're the funniest. There are a lot of Peruvian mummies, but also there's a lot of accidental mummies. And there's the theory that some people have is that a leading theory is that people noticed accidental mummification and then started doing it on purpose.
Ooh. Okay, so two things are very.
So what's cool about Stoneman Willie is he's both. He's accidental and on purpose. So he crosses those.
So we are accidental mummy experts, but we're not yet accidental mummy experts. Right, because we don't.
No, for sure. There are very intentional accidental mummy experts that know so much more than us.
This is a good note. And also, I have to ask you this before you ask me. Stoneman Willie, on the hotness scale, can he get it?
I'm going to say no at this point, but I will, probably at one time.
At one time.
I mean, there is some. Okay, so one of the things about the embalming method versus the wrapping method. Mm-hmm. Is you see more face. And one of the things that I think is so fun for our romance character is that he is not, there's no face. He's wrappings.
It's the face you don't play. That's where the actual jazz is.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a mystery thing. It's like somebody wears shades, where their eyes going. It's like that. It's like, I think it's like you just get to hear the voice. You get to think about it. Interesting about this movie that we're going to talk about now, he just kind of has a face. I don't know if the wrappings fall off. Very unclear what's going on with him, mummy-wise.
Yeah.
But let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do this.
But first, let me give you a summary. For those of you who have not watched the 1932 movie The Mummy, let me tell you a summary of it. All right, Mummy, the 1932 American pre-code supernatural horror film directed by Karl Freund and starring Boris Karloff and Zita Johann. It's the third in the series of classical Universal monsters, as I mentioned. If you have not seen it, here's what happens in this movie. The year is 1921, and there's two archaeologists, a smart one and his dumbass intern, who's probably his friend's son or something. They make a massive discovery, a King Tut level discovery, where they discover a mummy and a box made out of theatrical foam painted to look like wood.
I loved a lot of these props, for the record. I think it's real good.
The props are so good. They did a good job of saying, like, the wood is almost falling apart. It's supposed to be thousands of years old. The wood's not. The wood's gone, right? But then they're like, it's a sealed box, and when he opens it, he just lifts the top up. It's not even heavy. Just like pops it off, sets it down somewhere else.
I mean, we don't know how amazing they were. There's could be like a intricate, like the best balsa, craftsperson, thousands of years ago of antiquity.
And then they also used embalming fluid to preserve the
accidental
wood.
box embalmment. Yes,
it's a mummy wood situation.
That box looked amazing.
So the smart guy goes outside to have a conversation, and while he's up there, bumblefuck intern opens the box, finds a magical spell book, and just starts reading it aloud to himself. And it turns out you know, like in Harry Potter magicians, you have to like think the spell, you have to care about it. That's what school's for. In this world, the way magic works is if you say that no takesies backsies, it happens. Even if you didn't mean to read it, if you read it, boom, mummy is reanimated. So then the mummy gets up and he leaves, which causes the intern to giggle to death.
Grabs something on the way out and makes a dope handprint, a dusty handprint.
Yeah, it's a cool handprint. You see a little bit of like mummy wrapping. I do think we're supposed to be scared. The guy died of fear laughing, but we are, I don't know. It just looks like somebody off screen pulling two pieces of wrapping along the ground. I don't know. Very unscary, which is what I like about it.
Okay, look. So you know, you gotta count 1932. All right. So movies have only really been talking for like 3 years. So
that's
like,
true.
Or,
the fact that he's talking is still impressive.
Right, so well, I guess six years, I guess. But yeah, there's the first kind of chunk of it. But yeah, it's like this is a lot. And also, I think I'm just gonna do some inflation calculator stuff where it's like, I mean, I think it's as much the 20 times as scary, roughly.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah,
as it would have been at that time. So that's, I mean, just yeah, not only having a mummy speak, having anything speak is amazing.
Wait, did you say you did an inflation calculator for the scariness increase?
I'm imagining it tracks pretty well with like with buying
power.
Oh,
you're looking for money and then assuming spookiness also inflates the same rate.
You know, it's not this. Yeah, it's roughly. I don't know.
Great.
Someone get to me on that.
Did you tell me about have you gotten there?
No, I'm binging as fast as I can.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So 10 years go by. Here's the best part of this is by the way, this is the best part of this movie. If you've not seen The Mummy, this is the reason why it's worth talking about, I think. So mummy gets reanimated on accident, normal stuff. That's a classic. You're fine with that. But here's what you're not expecting. Then the movie cuts to 10 years later, and the mummy has built a life for himself in Egypt. He's got a job, he's got acquaintances, he's got some academic credibility. He's just a guy. 10 years have gone by, and now he's just a guy. And nobody seems to notice he's been dead for 3,000 years. I cannot stress this enough. He's still a mummy, but he just is a guy. That's the plot of this movie. Embedded in this movie is the fact that no one will notice for 10 years that you are a shambling corpse. And that's incredible.
I mean, again, in context, I don't know what our health system was like in the 30s. Everyone is probably almost about to die at all points.
I do think there's a difference, though, between looking almost dead and looking a long time dead.
This is the Depression, dog. Like, I don't think people are doing well fundamentally. Did you see that? The portrait of like the Dorothea Lange one where it's like the mom is people. This is rough times.
This wasn't the Dust Bowl. I guess it
was the Dust Bowl.
A desert.
Yeah,
it was a Dust Bowl, perhaps.
He
does look. He looks raisiny. That's the other thing is he's not wearing. He doesn't have stuff on his face. He looks raisiny. He's a mummy. He's wrinkled.
I mean, I think he's like, wow, you look slightly less dusty than everything else in this world at this time. You're amazing. You should be.
He also is wearing a hat. He's got a fez, and I think that's a fez does have that tassel. It's meant to distract the eye away from your face. Maybe it's like, look up here. I'm not a mummy. Would a mummy have this hat?
Yeah. The camera adds 10 pounds. The fez detracts 10. I don't know. Wrinkles? I'm not sure.
It detracts 10,000 years of wrinkles. He has a job. He is weird. Everyone seems to agree that he's a bit odd. He won't let people touch him. He won't shake hands. If you try to touch his arm, he'll like recoil. But that's it. That's his only tell. Everyone else is like, wow, he's just eccentric.
I mean, he does have a thing where it's like lighting finds him in weird ways and he just stares for a bit.
Yeah, there's this iconic shot of just Boris Karloff in just face makeup and a fez staring at the camera from 2 inches away, and they use it.
I mean, that is the shot that I think makes his career fundamental. I'm sure he did the same thing, the year before when he was Frankenstein's monster. That's just like, I'm going to stare. Like, and I think, look, it lands. Like, it works really well in the close. I don't know if it's like spoopy, spooksy or whatever, but it's like, this is something's happening here.
It's good. I mean, it's a very good shot. It's very cool. Side note, I just decided that the monster is also called Frankenstein.
Oh, just easier.
Well, so it is easier. A, it's easier, and like B, like I hate snootiness. But C, if you have a dog, and you call it Rex or whatever, they'll be like, "Oh, this is Rex Fox." Like they'll give it your last name when you have a dog. He made this creature out of parts. It has his last name, and Frankenstein is not his first name; it's his last name. So the monster is called Frankenstein's monster Frankenstein. That's his full name. And so you can shorten that to Frankenstein, right? Wouldn't it? I'm sure someone made this point already because it's been around for a while. But wouldn't it have his last name?
Okay, so I agree generally, but if we're gonna get specific about this, the whole point of the movie is that the creator rejected his creation, and so I think he really would like that last name, but he's like, look, Dad, like I'm your son, essentially, right? And he's like, nah,
right.
Not so much. So it's probably like basically like it's Frankenstein's monster Snow is probably like what it ends up being, right? Where it's like he's not identified in that way.
He might, but I do think even if you like don't get along with your children, they keep your last name. I don't know how you'd get out of that. But from now on, I'm going to assume his real name is Frankenstein's monster Frankenstein. That's his full birth
it's like
name.
Mario.
Exactly. Okay, so anyway, so the mummy is back. He's got a job. He's got a life. He's hanging around. He is lonely. That's what happened. Over 10 years, Daddy horny, Ezra. Daddy horny. He needs his girlfriend back. So the mummy goes to visit a couple of down on their luck archaeologists. And he's like, hey, guys, pro tip, dig right there. And he points at some ground. You might find something. And they do. And what luck? It's the tomb of his old girlfriend. It's the mummy's girlfriend, the mummy also. The mummyette. I don't want to... bride of the mummy.
I mean, TBD, we'll see.
Right. So he does. He tells the kids where to dig. They dig. They find it. Great news. What great luck.
And if you're wondering, what does this have to do with Rocktober? They had to move a lot of rocks.
Oh, so rocky and dusty. It was a lot of digging. And by they, obviously not them. Not the British people. British people don't dig.
Oh, wait. Sorry. I did a side detour on the chain of command. Later, we get a flashback to ancient Egypt, right? Where it's like, okay, when they bury, so that our mummy's name is Imhotep, all right? When they bury Imhotep, they're like, no one could find out where we buried him. And so we had the slaves killed, and the soldiers that killed the slaves, we killed them too.
Right. But so the slaves dig the pit, bury him, and then they're killed by the soldiers, but then they're like, oh no, the soldiers know, and so you have to kill the soldiers on top of them.
So, what happened? Who killed the soldiers?
That's a great question. And where did they go? Because it couldn't have just been one manager. It's not going to kill all the soldiers. And also, is the assistant manager going to do that, knowing full well he's got to be next, right?
Yep.
There's no... Once you... I understand why the soldiers did it, but there's no way you can be 2 lines up on that chain of command and go for it and not assume it's about to happen.
I think there was Milton, the assistant manager, who just had a blindfold on, did not know where he was, and just started like thrusting a spear in midair, hoping that he was going to get everyone before he figured out where he was.
I won't tell anybody. Step. It's so true because they all get... You see the spears from behind. No idea who's holding them.
Spears all the way down.
That's such a good point. That was a great. That was a really fun moment too. So the mummy. I was skipping ahead a little bit, but he meets this girl and he brings her back to his house and he hypnotizes her and he's like, "You won't remember anything I'm about to say." And then he explains all the backstory, and then she does not remember. It's a great exposition dump where he's like, "Hey, I'm going to say this. It's not for you because you literally won't remember, and we both agree that it's not helping you. But I'm going to tell you the whole backstory."
I will say this was a good moment generally, where it's like they had a cool transition. So again, like we are like 13 years away from Battleship Potemkin, and we have like some cool things that are happening in movies now, right? We have like a pool of water where we get like a kind of
Potemkin.
cool, Potemkin, smoke effect, and we kind of transition into the pool to see it, and then we do like a little frame going on, dissolve, and then like we have this like like this flashback, and then we come back in. I like it fundamentally.
I like it too. I think it will. So mummy powers are one of my other like things I like to hammer on when you talk about mummies. Is that inherently a dead person who's been wrapped in stuff and salt, who's been salted and preserved.
What?
Doesn't have magic.
Wait, hold on, real quick. Is that real? Is that true? Is that part of the mummification, or are you thinking of jerky? Or pickles, possibly.
Well, I mean, so it's similar. It's not actually salt. There's a bunch of different stuff that you put into it, and there's a few different recipes of it. But it's like, the point is to suck out all the moisture so it won't decompose. So it really is not unlike jerky. And if you look at, I'm not saying you should go look at pictures of Stoneman Willie. But if you held that next to a piece of jerky,
Okay. The great thing.
You'd see what I'm
the
thinking.
great thing is, since you said there's more than one recipe, if there's multiple recipes of anything, there is a definitive tasty video of the best way to do it.
that's very true. That's a very good point. So, so he's got. So what's the powers? Right. This is one of they're not spooky because they can't do anything. They just move slow. This is the thing about mummies as a horror movie is that they don't make sense as a monster. They can't do anything to you. They're weak. They're slow. They don't know anything. They've been gone for all the good bits, and they don't have any magical powers. So in this movie, they were just like they assign him. So mostly he does his killing by surprise. He startles you by being alive, and that causes you to die.
Which
he does
is-
that trick at least
is
twice.
surprising because so it is actually about 21 times more surprising than things were today.
Great, thank you. I thought about right.
Yep.
It is 21 times more surprising than you would have thought, but it's still like, oops. That's his killing method. Is like, hey, check me out. And if that doesn't work, he's got no backup plan. He does wield a knife briefly, but it's maybe ceremonial. So they give him a couple hours. They give him hypnosis.
Yeah, they do.
And then they give him a foamy bathtub that he can use to spy on people and see the past. So he's just got a magic bathtub.
Okay, don't undersell it. That sounds so relaxing.
Oh, it's sick. No, it's great. I'm not. I'm not
I mean,
against.
Lush sells mummy bath bombs, and I will put it all over it. Oh, that's.
And you can also see what your girlfriend is up to in a different house.
I don't know if I want that part of it. I guess that's
No, it's creepy. Well, there's a warning label.
Okay, great. But let's not undersell him. Sometimes he also, unless someone is wearing a trinket, he can kind of like from a distance force. Just clutch his hand, and it's tiring for him, but he can absolutely give them a heart attack, assuming their ticker is maybe a little iffy to begin with.
Yeah. He can't, if you're like an ox, he can't get you. But if you're a guy with a weak heart, he can force choke your heart through the bathtub. Even
Yes, unless you're wearing
a trinket.
little bit of a Osiris, I want to say pendant, Isis. I don't remember.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't remember either.
Right.
Okay, so now the mummy, he's got these powers. He's horny, so he's like, I'm gonna. This is where we get into the romance part. He's like, I want my girlfriend, and I specifically want the girlfriend that I died trying to reanimate because she died before me. So I'm gonna do it again. The one he was punished, according to this flashback, he was punished, and so was everybody who buried him,
And everyone who killed the
because
people
he
who
tried to
buried him.
reanimate his girlfriend, which is exactly. And the guy who they were like sold snacks to them on the way to the burial, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, that hill, that's over that way." This is a trail of blood in this guy's wake.
That's the problem.
We trying to reanimate this girl,
Didn't
and he's
understand
like,
infinite regression. I guess at the time in ancient Egypt, that was the issue, right? Like where you can.
"Yeah, they got 0, but they
Right,
hadn't
that
got to
was the
infinite
problem.
regression."
Okay.
It's another. But they did. He did. He did have thousands of years to learn from his one mistake, and what we know is, if you don't learn from history, you're cursed to repeat it. So he goes trying to reanimate his girlfriend
It's
again,
the
knowing
revolving
it'll be
door mummy
dangerous.
system, right? Where it's like it's recidivism,
Yeah.
right. And so it's
Recidivism,
a system
yeah.
of punishment. It's not a system of rehabilitation, right?
If this did feel retributive instead of
Yeah, if there had
rehabilitative, burying somebody alive
there
and
been
then killing the people who dug
restorative
the hole,
justice instead, I think
and
that
the people
probably,
who killed the people who dug the hole.
Look, mummified people.
That's
That's
such a
what
good
we
point.
learned, right? Is it?
Exactly. Oh, that's so true. That's so true. So I love this point. I hadn't thought about that at all. This is a great point. So, but he's trying to reanimate his girlfriend, but what happens is he gets caught by a guard in the museum while he's trying to do this, and so he shambles away, and then the guy dies from surprise, and. But there's a weird side effect that he was not expecting, which was that while he's recited these charms, these reanimation charms, which are all of a sudden way longer than when the intern said them, but while he's reciting these in the museum, another woman in town felt them, and she's the kind of woman who walks around going, I don't like modern Cairo, I miss ancient Cairo. And it turns out the reason she says shit like that is not because she's super fun and charming at parties, but because she is apparently the reincarnated soul of his girlfriend over thousands of years, because she hears she kind of feels his summoning spell and goes to him. And then even at one point she like wakes up in his house and is like, I'm the queen again. Like, so she is, canonical that she is the reincarnated ex-girlfriend. And so he gives up on the mummy of his ex-girlfriend and instead decides, because what you just said, recidivism, mummies make mummies. He decides to kill the new woman, mummify her, and then immediately bring her back as his reanimated girlfriend. And then presumably the two in his head will live happily ever after as weird, raisiny Egyptians.
I think it really goes to show how hard it is to date in your 2000s, right?
Yeah, I think there's this is way beyond Golden Bachelor situation. This is a Stoneman Bachelor situation for him.
Okay, wait. For the record,
yeah, it's he shows up on our time and he's out of everyone's age range.
In my world, where everyone's getting mummified, I would love a Bachelor, like Oops, All Mummies Bachelor, where it's all mummies.
So the mummies trying to date other mummies, but are they people who they dated when they were alive? Because he has a previous relationship. You're just assuming all mummies are friends. That's kind of racist.
Look, I don't know if they know each other yet. I just want to watch a show where it's mummies trying to date each other. I think that'd be interesting. Like, enough people are mummified and are reanimated that they're like, can I? Can I find love in this modern time?
Well, the answer is no, because she is not interested in this plan. She is. You'd think, hey, should I let this guy stab me and then drop me in boiling liquid and then hopefully bring me back forever? I think the idea is that he's making her immortal, because, like, why not just hang out with her now? She seems to like you when you hypnotize her. But she's not interested, and so she decides to call upon her deep-seated power.
Good time for it.
She prays to the god Isis, who causes a statue move its arm, and then that kills the mummy, and then everything's fine again.
I feel like there was like a lightning bolt maybe coming out of an Ankh, perhaps.
Yeah, there was some just like generic Egyptian magic happening.
Yeah,
there.
look, you don't look. Look, 1932 audience, you don't know what's supposed to happen here. You haven't seen this. Let's just go with me. This is how
this
it goes.
Is new. They're making it up.
Yeah.
So here is this brings me to my other favorite all mummy fiction, which you and I have talked about on podcasts in this very feed at some point. The thing that's so funny to me is that every movie about the mummy, implicit in it, is that the ancient Egyptians were correct about religion. She prays to Isis and it works, which means the ancient Egyptians were correct about God, which means no one has gotten to heaven for 3,000 years because they didn't burn enough goats.
Well, I mean, there's a jump. I think it's just not necessarily monotheistic world, right? There can be lots of things we got going on. We're just saying, like, look, the fact that they're ancient Egyptian gods doesn't mean that other ones aren't also in play, right?
Well, there are some. Whose like specific rule is no other gods.
Well, okay, that can
rule
be
number one for those is no other gods.
Yeah, well, they're wrong about that. I'm sorry, but
other 9 commandments, nailing it. That one, oops.
Yeah. Look,
didn't look. Actually, I think the translation that I've heard most often with the first commandment is you shall not have other gods before me, which does imply that they exist.
Absolutely, there, right? If you're saying like, look, you shall eat no other pizzas but Hawaiian. There are other pizzas out there for sure.
Yeah. And someone was like, therefore there are no pepperoni pizzas. You'd be like, no,
they're there.
They're just not for the cool kids.
Yeah. It's not even a commandment.
Oh, that's such a good.
Yeah, it's not a commandment.
We got to the bottom of Christianity just now. I don't know if anyone's ever thought of this before.
Yeah, it's right there. Yeah, we know it's there.
Wow. Okay. We just cracked this one wide open. Wow. Okay, but so at the very least, Egyptians' theology was correct.
Yes.
To the letter. Like every bit of it seems to have been correct. So you're saying, look, it's possible that there were also some Greek gods hanging around, Roman gods, whatever.
Totally.
Any of the patient gods. In your version, because you are very nice, you're like, also probably the modern gods are right about everything else except that part. I mean, or they exist, but their writing is just bad. They just lied to their people. Anyway, the point remains that their belief that the way to get to heaven was to bring money for the guy with the boat was absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And that is hysterical. Like, that is so goddamn funny that is just built. That's part and parcel of of this story, is that in that world, canonically, you get to heaven by boat.
I mean, that is the most grounded thing I could think of, right? Where it's like, look, you're not in heaven yet. You got to get there. someone's
Right.
going to take you there. They're going
It's
to
not
want
going to
something.
be a plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No one works for free.
Yeah. See, but you have to, when your friends die, when you bury Stoneman Willie, make sure you put in a small bag of gold for the boatman.
Yeah. And maybe
Because that boatman's not taking dollar bills, do you think? I mean, he's not taking a check. You can't PayPal that guy.
and maybe get him a bag of bugles also, because he's probably hungry.
But also, I mean, I don't know if he eats food, but also
Put them on
the
your fingers.
his. Look, man, we didn't have a lot of money where I come from, but check this out. And then you put it's a 40-foot tall half jackal, and he's putting bugles on his fingers, and he's like,
You tell me. Look, I just say because not everyone cares about.
No, you're right. No, you're
material
right. It would be
possessions.
delightful for him.
Everyone's
I'm on
gonna
your
love
side.
a bugle either by eating
yeah,
or
that's
finger.
so true.
Yeah, that's easy win. Everyone, bury us with bugles from now on, please.
For the boatman. So I love this, but also what's weird about this movie is that there is this reincarnation part, which I guess goes with your theory that everybody's a little bit right, which is that because I don't know that what I've learned of the ancient Egyptian religions, I don't know that there are a lot of reincarnation things, but this is objectively his ex-girlfriend.
I mean,
still
got some soul in there for sure. Yeah, I don't know what the rules are for this, where it's just it's the same blood or what have you. But yeah, it seems like it's all mashed up there. I mean, here's the thing: she did not know him that long, and so I very much understand why she's not down for this. And also, he's kind of he'd feel a little entitled. He's like, look, I went through this nameless death punishment for you. Like, can you just die a little bit for me? And it's like, no, buddy, it's not how that works, right?
no, it's not how it works.
Yeah.
That was on the agreement. I didn't ask you to die.
Yeah, I was already dead.
Because she was already dead, so he could have just chilled and they could have hung out together on the boat or whatever's on the other side of the boat. Like, yeah, I think also reincarnating her may not have, or reanimating her may not have had her permission. So I feel like he may have been presumptuous. Maybe she was in hell or heaven having a great time. New boyfriend. She didn't want to come back.
Oh yeah, it's great questions all around. I mean, I think the fun kind of subtext of mummy stuff is I think there's kind of a question of should we be messing around with this generally, right? So it's we're digging things up. Good idea, maybe not. And I think it's actually kind of interesting from a, I guess, historical perspective. This is an artifact, right, that we have right now, right? So people are kind of, Boris Karloff captured himself 90 years ago, right? And this is sort of this is a mummified kind of moment in time as a result, which is kind of cool. And I guess maybe they're kind of wrestling with this, should we be preserving the past in this way, where you can see I don't know, maybe some things won't look so great in future eras as a result.
Oh man, that's deeper than I was expecting.
They just keep on. Sometimes
Movies are the mummies of the modern world.
Yeah.
And some of it doesn't age well, like the blackface.
So are you thinking about the Nubian specifically?
I was thinking about the Nubian. Am I wrong?
He is black.
But also wearing so much thick makeup that it looks fake?
So this is a cool
Weird.
Yeah. So dude is named. Let's see. I'll just make sure I get the right.
But
name.
also during the burying scene, I feel like there was more. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't be sure for that. So this dude is named Noble Johnson, later known as Mark Noble. And so dude was super cool. So he was actually friends with Lon Chaney from school back in the day. He had his own studio called Lincoln Motion Picture Company, in 1916. He was producing it was a black owned films basically for the African American audience, and also he made the jump to talkies as well.
No kidding.
Yeah, no, I mean that's kind of a cool thing, right? Where it's you're kind of digging around. It's like who's this dude? And yeah, kind of a pretty amazing a bit of early history. Yeah, and he was one of the things I learned also you were allowed to kind of play a little bit. I don't know if it's good or not, but he was allowed to play a bit outside of his race as well, in part because of the way the color grading was in black and white films.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think he could maybe not necessarily only play black characters, not white characters, but maybe there's a little flexibility that wasn't necessarily true for actors when there's a switch to color. So
That's so interesting. I mean, he also the makeup does. I mean, I don't think I'm wilding out here. The makeup definitely looks like it's blackface
it
makeup,
was
which is
absolutely my
interesting.
first assumption as well. That's why I looked it up. Where it was
Yeah.
like, because I was like, I don't trust that anything happening in the 30s. And also, to be fair, they still called this character just straight up the Nubian, and like he was
Yeah.
like, hey, the mummy is claimed a slave. It's not great. So
No.
I don't want to say like, oh, they were so progressive in 1932.
No.
Not that. And so I think good on us to like, we're only a few years out from the jazz singer, right? And this is not a great time generally to be, I think, a person of color depicted in media. But Noble Johnson specifically, really interesting story. So
Interesting. Well, so let's see what last things we need to talk about this. Well, let's talk about the romance pit a bit. So one thing I do like about this is that the mummy is trying to date another mummy.
Yeah.
He's either trying to date his girlfriend, the mummy, or he's trying to make a new mummy to date. But he is... dating his girlfriend is, I think, really appropriate. One of the things that bothers me about a lot of supernatural romance is that the monster boy is always like 3,000 years old and very smart, and then the girl's in high school, and that's creepy. That's very, very upsetting. Twilight is unable to get around the fact that this is he is a creep, just a major creep. Mm-hmm. The way we handled it in our book was that he died at her age and then had no memories in between and did not have any emotional or physical growth, and then was reanimated at her exact age. So they were the same emotional age.
I think someone recently pointed out that like there may be like 1 or 2 year age gap, which is still maybe too much at that development stage. But yeah, it's definitely, we try to make it as close as possible. I'll say that.
Yeah. Also, she being modern would probably be a lot smarter because she went to a lot more school, and he didn't have time for that.
That's a great point.
But yeah, this age, he's trying to date somebody his own age. And then when that doesn't work, he tries to make someone who will look like she's his age. But I do wonder, if you freshly mummify somebody, she's still going to look way better than you.
Gosh, that's a good point. Well, I mean, look, that's surface differences. I don't know. Like, that's not the only thing that matters, right?
I mean, I do... Like, if we were to have continued our series, because the next thing that happens in Twilight is the argument, like, are you going to make me a vampire? And so we hinted at, are you going to make me a mummy? And it's, I mean, Make Me a Vampire is, like, depending on the story, is kind of crappy. But Make Me a Mummy is an objectively bad time for both of you. It would be really upsetting to actually do that.
Yeah. I mean, well, so we can do the other way, where it's like, make me human, right?
Yeah, that makes way more sense, is he wants to become not a mummy anymore. And then she'd be like, will I be attracted to you anymore?
Yeah. But it messes up, though, because maybe, like, she becomes double human, right? She uses the Make Me Human spell on herself, and she's, like, the most human. She's like...
Who do you think is double human in the world?
The Rock?
Just size-wise?
I don't know. I mean, like, I look...
Charisma?
Yeah. Rockiness. I haven't... Well, like, he has multiple personalities, probably, right? There's a rock persona, and there's, like, there's Dwayne Johnson, right? So, I mean, that's at least 2 people there.
That's a good point.
I mean, I don't know who else is, like, on your category for the most human. Not Jesus, right? Because he's supposed to be all human and all God. But that's like, that can't be double human.
That's different.
Yeah.
That's different. You're not double vanilla if you're all vanilla, all chocolate.
Right.
He's a human god swirl on soft serve.
You heard it here first. We got a lot of good theology.
We really solved Christianity. Okay, I think probably to wrap this up, we should do some sort of not ranking against each other. We don't need a list of these 3 things, but I think we should, like, rate the mumminess and the sexiness.
Yeah, I did want to do that. I was also curious. I don't know if you have it handy, if you can find it. I was curious where this would maybe, like, fall down roughly on the Kevin Bacon list.
Oh, I don't have it. I'm not going to find it.
Never?
I refuse.
Okay. I think this is at least mid.
Yeah, it's very mid. I think that's the right answer. I mean, so I guess let's like honest answer for this as a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a 1930s movie, so it's weird to, like, rank on other things. I think it does some cool stuff. Yeah, the bathtub prop is really cool. I think it scoots along. It's definitely not too slow. It's like 50 minutes or whatever. I kind of wish film still cost $10,000 a minute or whatever it was, like where it was like, or it was like the canister could only do 3 minutes, because it really keeps the stuff moving.
Yeah. No, I'm like that. It's weird because some stuff is like very like theatrical, like stage play stuff still, where it's like some of the exposition is just. I think they had yet to find better ways of doing it. But
yeah, I think hiding the ball is a newer skill.
Right. And have things happen in action, I guess, as opposed to just like, oh man, I wish I could touch you, but your mummy power is too strong, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. That's true. That's so true.
But yeah,
so it's pretty mid, but I mean, I like an old movie, and I like an old monster movie too, where like that's the thing about spook inflation that you were talking about. I do like. It's fun to watch what seemed scary before.
Yeah, this is definitely not unwatchable. I think this is still especially for the amount that it clocks in at, like just around an hour. This is pretty watchable, and it's not like, and there's this isn't bad, and it's interesting where it's interesting to see what do they save from it for other Mummy stuff, right? Because there's like a lot of kind of like similar plot lines in Brendan Fraser Mummy also.
Well, so I'm glad you brought that up. So here's the interesting thing about this. So the Brendan Fraser Mummy has a lot of things that I thought were a little similar to this, as does the Tom Cruise, the Cruise Missiles reboot. Mm-hmm. There's clearly a Mummy thing that this is invented. But those later Mummy movies, although they include sometimes the Scroll of Thoth or something, those are not based on this movie, because what Universal did was like 6 years later, they made another Mummy movie called The Mummy's Hand, I think.
Oh.
I should know this. Yeah. 1940. So 8 years later, they released a Mummy movie called The Mummy's Hand that is a total reboot. It's not a sequel. But it does use, in the old-timey movie Lazy Way, it uses a couple of the Boris Karloff close-ups, and it uses the entire score from Frankenstein as its score.
I mean, that makes sense, right? Well, because like even if it's a hit, most people aren't seeing anything, right? And like, yeah, it's
so true.
It's still amazing, right? So yeah, just reuse what you can. And
so the plot, but that movie, The Mummy's Hand, is the script that was rebooted. That's the basis for the Brendan Fraser Mummy, and also the basis for the Tom Cruise Mummy. So this movie they gave up on it right away, made a new one, and that one's the one that everyone references. But I've never heard people talk about The Mummy's Hand, so I guess I should watch that next too.
That's what isn't it? Look, there's some clunk here. But this is kind of a fun time to be looking at movies and fun to be making movies where it's like you can see them trying to work it out.
And what you're saying was, like, the point about it's not that the movie was based on this, but they solved some problems that one needs to solve. How do you make a mummy a monster? Well, there's the curse. We know about the curses from King Tut. That's kind of scary. And then we also know, like, we can have some vague Egyptian magic. The idea of, like, I'm going to resurrect another mummy is, like, that's in there for the whole time. The idea of him being buried alive as being a scary mummy, like, that's what makes him a scarier mummy. That's, like, crucial to the next couple. The Tom Cruise one, they like bury him up in a pool of lead or something.
I think that was the thing where it's like when they're looking at this, right? Monster hit already, and they're like, okay, what is the scariest possible thing about a mummy? It's like, well, it's probably being buried alive, right? Like the intricacy of that, where it's like this is a weird way, not just to be like, okay, it's a weird way to be buried, but it's weirder if it's a punishment and you were bad and you're alive. Like that's real weird, and that's enough of a thing to like get it started.
And I believe what I read was historically it may have happened a time or two. It was not common. This was not a normal form of punishment.
Right.
It doesn't, and it seems also like it's hard to tell if it was a punishment or
an oopsie?
Like it's possibly an oopsie, which was really common. But they're definitely it was. But there was also the idea of a mummy coming back to life was. Like around there are Egyptian writings that are sort of like, oh, this mummy got up and walked around, but not as a horror thing, not as a spooky ghost, but just as like there he goes.
Yeah. Off he no way. Has off he
pop. Yep. He went for a little walk. I think they solved some problems that they had to solve, and they kind of like instituted some things that would be kept up with for a long time. Yeah, it's a fun time.
Yeah. Okay. So on the hotness scale, I think this mummy probably cannot yet get it, I would say.
You don't think he can get it?
I
He's
think
so tall.
I mean, look, they actually did a great job of showing it that way. Boris
Yeah.
Karloff's only like 5'11".
Is he really?
yeah.
Oh, I was assuming he looked like 6'8"
I
or
know,
something
right?
compared to everybody.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, you know,
so
I
he was
guess he's 20
scarier
times.
because he's a mummy. But weren't people much smaller back then? And don't you shrink when you dehydrate like that? How is he that tall?
I mean, maybe just there's maybe we don't always see his feet at the same time. So maybe stand on like a apple box or whatever old timey that is version of that apple crate, single apple. I'm not sure.
Okay, so I get you just want to do can he get it, or do you want to do like a 1 to 8 hotness scale?
Oh, that's better. 1 to 8 hotness scale seems right.
Yeah, tell me how hot he is 1 to 8, or how much he can get it 1 to 8. You can use halves.
I think he's probably around the Mendoza line of like 3.5.
What's the Mendoza line?
It's for,
Should I know
it's
this?
for hitters, for batters, where it's like if you're hitting above or below 200 as in baseball.
Oh, okay.
That's the Mendoza line.
Wow, you did not. Okay, maybe I just like tall guys. I think, and also Boris Karloff. He has command. He can command a room. He can literally command you. He's got hypnosis, which I don't find hot right now, but I suppose I would in the moment. So I think this guy. I think he's much closer to being able to get it. So on the 1 to 8, can you get it scale? I'm going to say Boris Karloff's The Mummy is a 6.5.
Wow.
He's way up there.
I mean, I think that the important thing about this is like they did a good job avoiding, intellectually some of the pitfalls of hot mummies, right? Where it's like, and they definitely make him seem stronger than you realize. And so I think it's like a flattering mummy portrayal, I guess, on the whole.
He's going to get stuff out of cabinets. He's going to open jars for me.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely like an awakening of some kind for someone watching this, I'm sure. So
Yeah. Raisiny is not my favorite look, but like I kind of like his dress. I don't know. I'm into it.
There is some style, and I'm curious about the life he had in that decade or so, right?
Yeah, 10 years. You think he never slept with anybody that whole time?
Yeah,
Come on.
I don't know. Yeah, what are the interests, right? He has a cat, right? Doesn't he?
I think he does. He also murders her dog. I forgot about that. That I hate.
I assume
That's
the
not
cat
hot.
did it. For what it's worth, the cat was on the
No.
dog's corpse, so I don't know.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That was a weird thing where it was like the dog hates him. Like the dog's the only one who knows it's a mummy. I think is why they had to get rid of him. They were like, this dog suspects me.
Look, I don't think necessarily he knew it was a mummy, but I think a dog knows jerky and a dog knows bones. And it's like, I think
that's so
there's
true.
enough jerky, enough bones that this is worth my time.
I guess we do have to add this disclaimer though. For the dog dies in the end. It's in the middle, but the dog does not make it. But it's off screen.
It's
so
off screen because
about
they
it.
didn't know how to show anything in this movie. So
Almost
all
everything
deaths-
was off screen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
off screen.
It's so true. Okay, so 1 to 8, can he get it? Now, question: 1 to 8, mumminess. What do you think of the mumminess of this mummy?
5. It's weird because you don't have a wrap.
The wrapping really the no wraps bothers me.
Yeah.
That definitely took away. That's my favorite thing. Even in Abbott and Costello, it was covered in bandages.
Yeah, so it's a little weird to like just not have that. But again, he like had a life. He was somewhat wrapped up to begin with, and then unwrapped for most of it. And so it's weird. You can change your clothes over 10 years. That's fine. I don't have to fixate on that. So I think
So you think he had wrapping on his face and he took it off?
there's more wrapping to begin with, and he got less wrapped when he had the Fez get up. In my
Oh, that's fine then. Yeah, that's all right. Although I would think that would start to you'd like expose the skin because the whole thing is it could still rot, right?
Right, that's true. No, but now that I remember, so in the flashback, the face was all the way wrapped, right? Like he was.
Oh,
all,
yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. This is fine. I think this feels mummy-ish, I guess, right? So I'd be more inclined for like a 6. I think it's not peak mummy, but yeah.
I think for me, like the key things I look for, wrappedness. I also like shambling, and I feel like he mostly just walked.
He didn't walk fast though, right? There's no speed mummying, right?
No, but I think one of the keys is like maybe it's because he took off the wrappings. But I think of mummies as you can't bend your knees, so they kind of just shuffle. So the fact that he
Okay.
wasn't doing a mummy shuffle is a bothersome thing for me.
Any person over 50 years old, if you've given them a decade of free time, at some point they're doing Pilates, they're doing yoga, they're doing Zumba, right? Like I think he's really worked on his mobility, his pliability, his flexibility. His IT bands
that's interesting.
Are
I guess
amazing.
all that's true, but it sort of still feels like once he was reincarnated, he decided not to be a mummy anymore, and I don't think that's cool.
How he turned his
So
back
I'm going to
on
dock him points
mumminess.
for trying to get away from the thing that defined him as cool. So I'm going to say this is only a 4 for mumminess.
Okay. So I mean, these are not bad scores for really the original film depiction of a mummy. This is pretty good.
Nah, it's a good thing. Kicked it off the genre. Okay, Well, so the last things I want to tell you before we go. So next week we're going to talk about The Mummy, or Ramsay the Damned. So this is the Anne Rice novel that pioneered, as far as I can tell, pioneered mummies as hot, except for little sneak peek, not a mummy. 0 on the mummy scale for the mummy in The Mummy. He is not a fucking mummy. It's a lie. Anne Rice lied on the cover and throughout. But there is a mummy in it, and that'll be interesting. And there is a lot of romance. So this is going to be, can he get it? Yes, of course he can get it. But, I mean, this is like an 8 get it 0 mummy, just to spoil the ending of that. Anyway, all that and more next week when we talk about The Mummy.
This is like the dance 10
Rice.
looks 3 kind of thing, where it's
It
like,
really is
get
for
it,
him.
8,
Yeah.
mummy 0.
Yep. That's
Okay.
exactly right. He can get it because he's just a guy. He's a hot guy, canonically, not a mummy. But so we're going to read that next week. We'll talk to you about that. If you want to hear our opinions of what mummy books should be like, you can buy Unwrap My Heart. You can get it on Amazon or other bookstore or good bookstores anytime you want. It's also available in limited quantities, autographed. Again, unwrapmyheart.com.
Oh,
Any final thoughts, Ez?
we should all, anyway, like, we're here. We should absolutely, everyone send your best, whatever that might look like, mentally, through a pool or whatever.
Yes.
To Anthony on having a great paternity leave. I would say that as well, right? So.
Yeah, I also think you should send us any questions or comments you have about mummies. I want especially questions about mummies. Let us know all of your mummy Q&A so we can get to some of those in the next 2 episodes. So send that to podcasts@read-weep.com, because this is the Mummy Minute, brought to you by The Best Thing Ever, brought to you by Read It and Weep, brought to you by the Completely Legitimate Podcasting Corporation.
Oh my God.
Brought to you by Completely Legitimate Pizza, which is the parent company.
Well, that I love. I'm not sure I remember that.
It was your idea, so of course you love it. But yeah, so this is a production of the Completely Legitimate Podcasting Company, and but anyway, podcasts@read-weep.com is the email, or is email. There's a bunch of them. Find us anywhere. But
Find
just
an
send me
email.
some.
Just shout
Send
into
an
the
email
void.
to somebody.
Yeah.
But mostly, if you can, speak it into your bathtub, and I'll hear it. And we'll be back with more mummy stuff next week. Thanks for hanging out, Ezra.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, dude.
Bye, guys. Spooky.